You don't have what it takes to run a business, little brother. That's what she said, standing in my office, in my space, with my nameplate still on the desk. Her voice didn't tremble. Her posture didn't shift. She delivered the sentence like a decision she'd been waiting years to speak aloud. My name is Ethan Marchand, and for the past 18 years I'd been the operational backbone of Marchand Estates, our family's boutique hotel chain based in Marseille. I wasn't the one with magazine interviews or networking brunches. I didn't charm investors or grace hospitality summits. That was Isabelle, my sister. But I was the one who knew the buildings, the people, the numbers. I made sure our 6 hotels across southern France actually functioned, that they were clean, staffed, safe, that when the guests left in the morning, they wanted to come back. For 18 years, I never asked for a title, never asked for praise. And in 18 minutes, I was erased from the company I helped hold together. She had taken over just 12 days ago after our father stepped aside to become chairman. He'd always said he'd never truly retire, just loosen the wheel. Apparently loosening meant turning it straight over to my sister. Her first official act, firing me. We've hired a consultant, she added, from Rivage Grand. He's turned around underperforming properties twice the size of ours. She didn't make eye contact, just gestured at the small cardboard box I was using to clear my desk. My hands stayed steady. I slid my framed photo of our grandfather, the one taken in front of the original Toulon property, into the box last. The same photo Isabelle never displayed in her new office. You'll get 8 months severance, she said, checking her watch. Legal has prepared the terms. I kept my expression flat. Then I said just 4 words. Good luck with Avignon. That made her blink. The Avignon project was behind schedule, over budget, staff exhausted, contractors on edge. A mess. And now, no longer my mess. We'll manage just fine, she recovered. This consultant is efficient, strategic. I nodded, lifted the box and walked out. 18 years of commitment, sealed inside a shallow brown box. I walked out into the hallway. No one said a word, but they saw me. On the drive home, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. 5 years ago, our father had taken me to lunch an old steakhouse by the harbor. He'd stirred his espresso slowly, then looked at me over his glasses. Never put everything into one brand, Ethan. Hotels are assets, but land is legacy. I took that to heart. While Isabelle expanded PR partnerships and guest experience packages, I quietly negotiated something else. Ownership. I bought the land beneath Toulon, Nice, and Avignon, our 3 most profitable hotels. The deals were structured cleanly. I purchased them from private families who'd held the rights since the original 80-year leases were signed in the late 1960s. Marchand Estates remained the tenant. Preferential lease agreements were signed 5-year terms, a gift to the company. And now, they were expiring. In 3 months. The morning after I was fired, I still woke up at 5:45 a.m. Reflex. But no reports to read. No messages from property managers. No system errors to fix before breakfast. The silence was deafening. I sat on my back porch, coffee in hand, watching cargo ships glide across the port of Marseille. They moved with purpose, quiet, unshaken, not unlike how I felt. My phone buzzed. Henry Delgado, head of maintenance at Avignon. Heard what happened. Their loss. New guys already making changes, cutting corners, renovations going backward. I typed a brief reply. Appreciate the message. Not my circus anymore. He sent one more. Avignon's still your work. Just thought you should know. Later that day, my father messaged me. Breakfast, Rosalie's Cafe, 7:45. Rosalie's was 2 blocks from our original Toulon office. I hadn't been there with him in years. When I walked in, he was already seated, same corner booth, same black coffee, same plate of warm Pain Perdue. You don't need to explain, I said as I sat down. But he shook his head. She told me after the fact, he said. Said the board agreed. The board is her. And her 2 former classmates. He sighed. I would have handled it differently. But you didn't stop it. Silence. Then she believes the company needs structure. Formal management. Less family oversight. And you. I believe the board wants to see growth. And she offers that. On paper. The food arrived. Eggs for me. No appetite, but I picked at it. She doesn't understand the leases, my father said finally. I sipped my coffee. They're in the records. You know, she doesn't read footnotes. I looked at him. His expression was tired, not unkind. The renewals are due in 3 months, he added. I know. Have you decided terms? Yes. And I paused. Market rate. No favors. He leaned back, eyes narrowing just slightly. That will affect operating costs? Yes. He didn't answer. We finished in silence. As we stepped outside, he placed a hand on my shoulder. You always saw business as a foundation, he said. Your sister sees it as a performance. She always liked the spotlight. She forgot who built the stage. I drove home, unlocked the door to my home office, and sat in front of a glass case on the wall. Inside was the original floor plan of the Toulon property, dated, inked by hand, signed by my grandfather. Below it hung a key, brass, heavy. The original room 101. I stared at it. Then I opened my laptop. There was work to be done. 2 weeks after my last day at Marchand Estates, Isabel finally called me. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I already knew what she wanted. The voicemail was short, clipped, almost transactional. Ethan, we need to discuss the transition. Some documents are missing. Call me. There was no apology, no warmth. Just the voice of someone who expected cooperation by default, even after betrayal. I let it sit. By the time her second message came through, my lawyer, Olivia Kern, had already reviewed the company's formal request. They wanted access to renovation blueprints for the Avignon Hotel, lease summaries for Toulon, Nice, and Avignon, maintenance logs and vendor contacts, my personal notes from site evaluations. Olivia was thorough in her reply. Every official document remained on the company's server, filed under appropriate department tags. Personal records, however, were not company property. We made that clear. 3 days later, Isabel showed up at my apartment. No warning, just a knock. She breezed past me without asking, dressed in her usual perfection, beige trench coat, hair tied back, heels tapping like punctuation on the hardwood. You're ignoring me, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. I'm respecting your decision, I replied, closing the door behind her. You made it clear I'm no longer part of Marchand Estates. She turned. This isn't helpful. That's not my job anymore. She let out a sharp breath. Where are the files? In the shared drive. I'm talking about the files that make sense. The ones you actually used. I crossed my arms. You mean the ones I organized while you were busy pitching partnerships in Monaco? She ignored the jab. My new operations consultant needs full context. Avignon is behind, and your consultant has turned around properties twice this size. Isn't that what you told me? She narrowed her eyes. This is bigger than pride, Ethan. The company needs. I cut her off. No, the company needed integrity. You needed convenience. She stood there frozen for a second. Then she collected her bag. Fine, legal will send another request. Let them. I opened the door. She didn't say goodbye. The following week, a certified letter arrived from Marchand Estates' legal team. Another formal request. We responded again, professionally, clearly, and with finality. Every official document was already available. What they couldn't find wasn't lost. It was simply the difference between doing a job and understanding it. By the end of the month, I started getting calls. Henry Delgado messaged me first. Avignon's budget cut by 20%. Contractors walking. Staff being told to tighten priorities. It's a mess. Then came an email from one of our longtime suppliers. Apparently, their contract had been terminated in favor of a cheaper firm. One with no prior relationship. One that had already missed 2 deliveries. The foundation was cracking. And for the first time, I felt it. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just an ache. Because even though I was no longer there, those were still my people. People who trusted me. People Isabel hadn't even bothered to speak with. Then the real message arrived. Not from a contractor, not from staff. From the property insurance provider. A request for verification on ownership and structural liabilities related to the Toulon, Nice, and Avignon locations. Apparently, Isabel's team had tried to update the insurance terms and discovered they didn't own the land. I smiled just slightly, then forwarded the email to Olivia. The next morning, my father called. He never wasted time with greetings. Did you know, he asked, voice low. Yes. That Isabel doesn't read legal documents. I assumed. A pause. She's called an emergency board meeting. Says you've hidden ownership records. That you're jeopardizing operations. I didn't react. Is there any truth to that? No, I said calmly. Everything is properly documented. The leases have been signed for 5 years. Marchand Estates has been paying rent to me. There was silence on the line. A long, long silence. Finally, he spoke. She thought EM Holdings was a property firm. It is, I said. Ethan Marchand Holdings. By noon, Olivia received a legal inquiry from Marchand's counsel. They wanted clarity on the lease renewals. I gave her my answer. Send the new terms. All of them. Market rate. No discounts. No extensions. You're sure? Yes. The Toulon Hotel stood 5 stories tall, a graceful white structure with green shutters and hand-laid tiles on the roof. I had overseen its renovation 6 years ago, stripped it down to the bones, rebuilt it without compromising a single detail. And now I sat across the street in my car watching guests check in. The facade hadn't changed, but everything underneath had. My phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. They've received the new lease proposals. Expecting a response today. I closed my eyes for a moment. Let the weight of the decision settle. The previous leases had been gracious. Below market rent that saved Marchand Estates over $2.1 million across 5 years. The new terms. Fair, competitive, and unflinching. They would tighten the margins and expose every cut corner. Exactly what Isabelle had tried to then I saw her. Silver Peugeot, tailored jacket, phone at her ear. She stepped out of the car and walked briskly toward the entrance of Toulon. She wasn't supposed to be in town. Curiosity stirred. I called him. She's here. What's going on? He lowered his voice. Emergency inspection. She probably consulted. They're combing through blueprints, asking about land use, looking for a way to dispute ownership. He paused. Off the record. I think she's trying to see if they can legally reclaim the land. I said nothing, because I already knew the answer. That evening I drove to the Nice Land Records office, pulled copies of all deed transfers, lease signatures, renewal clauses, historical surveys. Then I checked adjacent county records and found something I wasn't expecting. 3 commercial development permits, filed by an entity called IM Visions LLC. Same initials as Isabelle's full name, Isabelle Marchand, filed using her married surname. 3 permits, 3 cities, all adjacent to or competing with our most profitable hotels. She hadn't fired me because I was incompetent. She had fired me because I was in the way. I called Olivia. I need you to look into a company called IM Visions. 2 days. That's how long it took Olivia to call me back. She had the results. IM Visions is registered to a holding address in Lyon, she said. Its managing director is Isabelle Marchand Sorel. She filed under her married name. I said nothing. She continued. There are active development permits in Nice, Toulon, and Avignon, all within a 5-kilometer radius of your properties. All filed quietly over the past 2 years. What type of development, I asked, though I already knew. Luxury hospitality. Boutique format. Her proposal to the city council in Avignon explicitly references the market conditions created by Marchand Estates. There it was. Plain, quote, strategic. She hadn't just removed me from the company. She was building a competitor, right next to our legacy. She wasn't restructuring. She was replacing. I asked Olivia to dig further. She found a business plan submitted during a funding pitch. It included phrases like leveraging in-depth operational insight gained from Marchand's success, capturing clientele cultivated through Marchand brand equity, transition plan for repositioned assets. I stared at those lines for a long time. They weren't just strategy. They were confession and betrayal. The next morning, I received a call from Vincent Arnaud, one of the newer board members, an old university friend of Isabelle's. We hadn't spoken in over a year. I saw the lease renewal terms, he said, without greeting. I waited. And I've heard some rumors. About Isabelle. About this IM Visions. They're not rumors, I replied. They're filings, verified. He exhaled slowly. I joined the board out of respect for your father, not for this. He lowered his voice. She's proposing to sell Toulon, Nice, and Avignon. Claims the new lease terms make them unsustainable. That's when it all connected. She wasn't just trying to punish me. She was trying to buy the buildings. Cheap. Hollowed out by her own decisions. Her new company would acquire them, and I unknowingly would become her landlord. It was methodical, cold, and almost brilliant. Except she underestimated one thing. I wasn't out for revenge, but I was done being silent. I called Samuel Duray, CEO of Commonwealth Hotels, a multinational group that had once tried to buy a controlling stake in Marchand Estates. We'd met at a conference in Bordeaux years ago. He respected my work, but I'd turned him down then out of loyalty to the family. That loyalty had expired. I flew to Paris the next morning and met Samuel in his office overlooking the Seine. After brief pleasantries, he got to the point. I heard Marchand might be offloading some properties, he said. Curious timing. It's more than that, I replied. I laid out everything. The leases, the ownership, the betrayal, the permits, and the truth behind Isabel's plan. He listened closely, not interrupting once. When I finished, I slid a folder across the table. It contained financials, property history, renewal clauses, my offer. Commonwealth acquires the buildings, I said. I remain landowner. I'll provide long-term lease agreements at competitive rates. He raised an eyebrow. Why not lease them back to Marchand, charge a premium? Let her suffer a little. Because she's not interested in saving Marchand, I replied. She's interested in gutting it. He tapped his fingers on the desk. And you? I'm interested in protecting the people who made those hotels what they are. And ensuring they have a future that's not built on lies. Samuel leaned back, thoughtful. You've changed since we last spoke. I've just stopped waiting for permission. He nodded. We'll draft a letter of intent. Quietly. A week later, whispers spread across the hospitality industry. An anonymous leak to an online journal speculated that Marchand Estates was facing internal unrest, that its president had proposed divesting flagship properties, that Commonwealth was positioning for strategic expansion in southern France. The article didn't name names, but it didn't have to. Isabel's response was swift. A company-wide email. No properties are for sale. Marchand remains stable and focused. Rumors are unfounded. She was on the defensive, and that meant the timing was right. That evening, my father called. His voice was more tired than I'd ever heard it. She says you're orchestrating a hostile takeover. I'm not. She says you want to humiliate her. I don't. He was silent. Then asked, What are you trying to accomplish, Ethan? I looked out my window. Marseille's harbor lights flickered in the distance. The same view I'd seen since the day I bought this apartment. I'm trying to protect what's worth protecting, I said. Nothing more. 3 weeks later, Marchand's quarterly report showed a 9% drop in revenue. Costs were rising. Guests were complaining. Staff turnover had doubled. The board noticed. And this time, they didn't stay quiet. I received an email from Vincent. The board would like to meet, without Isabel present. They didn't ask. They requested. And I accepted. It had been almost 2 months since I last walked through the glass doors of Marchand Estates. This time I didn't wear a staff badge. No branded lapel pin. No morning meeting prep in my hands. Just a leather folder. And the calm certainty that I was no longer asking for a seat. I was the one deciding the shape of the table. The receptionist greeted me stiffly. She'd heard the rumors. So had everyone else. I was escorted up to the 10th floor past familiar walls, past the framed photographs of smiling guests, and luxury terraces, images Isabel had curated to sell a lifestyle she was barely keeping afloat. Outside the boardroom I paused, took one breath, then opened the door. 7 board members sat around the oval table. My father at one end, silent, folded hands. Vincent sat to his left. 2 of Isabel's former business school allies avoided my eyes. Only one chair was empty, hers, as it should be. I took the seat opposite my father. Vincent nodded. Ethan, he began. Thank you for coming. I know this situation is difficult. I appreciate the invitation, I said, my voice steady. I assume you've reviewed the documents. Each member had a copy of the file I'd sent the night before. It contained the 3 lease renewal terms for Toulon, Nice, and Avignon, proof of land ownership under EM Holdings, publicly available permits linked to IM Visions LLC, and the business plan drafted by Isabel Marchand Sorel. One of the members, a man named Gregoire, a quiet investor from Geneva, cleared his throat. This business plan was submitted to a private equity group in London. Yes, I said. We verified it. My father looked pale. He opened the document again as if hoping the words had changed. They hadn't. She's proposing her own chain, Vincent said flatly. One that directly competes with Marchand, using customer insights data and supplier relationships from her current role. It's worse than that, I said. She intended to devalue these properties, push for their sale, and acquire them under her own company through shell partners, effectively stripping Marchand of its crown jewels. There was a long pause. Then my father spoke, quietly. I asked you once what you were trying to accomplish, Ethan. I remember. And now, I met his gaze. I'm not trying to destroy Marchand, father. I'm trying to separate what's still worth saving from what's already rotting. At that moment, the door opened. Isabel walked in. Not hurried, not flustered, prepared. She wore her usual perfection navy blazer, pearl earrings, that sharpness in her eyes that always made people assume she was the smarter sibling. She paused when she saw me, and the files in front of the board. This meeting was scheduled without my consent, she said. Vincent didn't even blink. Your role is suspended pending board review. You may speak, but this time, you will answer questions. Her jaw tightened, but she sat directly across from me. The room waited. Do you deny the documents? I asked. She didn't answer. Do you deny that IM Visions LLC is registered under your name, or that you filed permits for boutique hotel developments less than 5 kilometers from Marchand's existing properties? I didn't breach any contracts, she said, her voice clipped. There's no non-compete clause in my agreement. That's not the question. I leaned in slightly. Did you or did you not intentionally suppress the value of these 3 hotels, then propose their sale to the board while planning to acquire them through your own firm? She didn't flinch, but she didn't answer either. My father looked at her, not with anger, with something worse. Disappointment, the kind that doesn't need words. She saw it, and for the first time she blinked. Gregoire spoke again. We've reviewed Commonwealth Hotel's acquisition proposal, he said. It's fair, above market value, and includes staff retention guarantees. Vincent added, it also gives Marchand an injection of capital we desperately need, without compromising our remaining properties. Another member chimed in. Isabel, why didn't you bring these permits to our attention? She straightened, because I knew how it would look. But my intention was never to hurt the company. Silence. Then I spoke. You didn't fire me because I lacked vision. You fired me because I stood in the way of yours. She turned to me. Do you think this makes you better, sitting here with your folder of gotchas hoping they'll see you as the savior? No, I said. I don't want their applause. I want their clarity. Vincent stood. I propose we accept Commonwealth's offer and proceed with the sale of Toulon, Nice, and Avignon. All in favor. One by one, hands were raised. Even the 2 friends of Isabel. Only my father abstained. And Isabel. She walked out. Without a word. Without a glance back. After the room cleared, my father remained. He looked smaller now, older than I remembered. She's still my daughter, he said. I know. And you're still my son. I haven't forgotten. He looked up at me. Are you taking over? I shook my head. I've already built what I needed. He nodded slowly. Then what happens now? I let go, I said. 12 months passed. Quietly. No headlines, no press conferences, no family scandals blown open for the public to gawk at. Just quiet motion. The kind that changes everything without needing applause. Toulon, Nice, and Avignon were now officially part of the Commonwealth Hotel's regional collection. The properties had retained their names, their charm, and most importantly, their staff. Henry Delgado still ran maintenance at Avignon. Delphine, our head concierge in Toulon, had been promoted to Regional Guest Services Director. Nothing had collapsed. Nothing had burned. In fact, revenues were up 17% year over year, which didn't surprise me, because the buildings had always been solid. It was the structure around them that had been the problem. From my new role as Strategic Operations Advisor for Commonwealth, I visited each property once a month. No desk, no corner office, just field reports, mentoring, and ensuring the small details, the kind that Isabel never saw, were still being honored. One afternoon, after a facilities walkthrough in Avignon, I returned to the rooftop garden we'd installed 5 years ago. The sun poured across the stone terrace. Guests drank rosé beneath canvas shades. The basil planters we'd kept alive since the first relaunch still grew in neat rows. Samuel Duray, the CEO of Commonwealth, joined me. He handed me a printed report. Quarterlies look good, he said. Avignon's exceeding occupancy targets. I nodded. They've got the best team in the region. He leaned on the railing beside me. You ever think about what would have happened if she hadn't fired you? I smiled slightly. I would have stayed. He laughed. That's the scary part. Later that week over dinner with Olivia, I got an update on the rest of the Marchand family. Isabel had resigned from Marchand Estates 2 weeks after the vote. Her new brand IM Visions had officially filed for bankruptcy protection 5 months later. Turns out, investor money disappears fast when your strategy is built on secrets. She'd moved to Geneva according to Olivia, though no one could confirm. My father, on the other hand, had finally let go. He sold his remaining shares and retired completely. Now he spent his days gardening, fishing, sending me awkward texts about tomatoes. Once a month we had dinner. No lectures, no business talk. Just slow conversation. We'd found a peace that didn't need fixing. That fall I received a formal offer from Commonwealth's board. They wanted me to step into a full-time executive role. Vice President of Regional Strategy. Great salary, bigger title, relocation to London. I turned it down, not out of pride, but because I knew the answer now. I had already built what I needed, and it wasn't about proving myself anymore. One Sunday morning, I stood outside the Toulon Hotel sipping coffee from a small ceramic cup. The front desk was buzzing. Luggage carts rolled across the marble floor. A couple stood at the concierge desk laughing. I walked through the side corridor, down a short hall, past the linen closet, past the service lift, until I reached the small maintenance door marked 101, Storage. I unlocked it with the original key, polished brass, heavier than most, still warm from my pocket. Inside, the space was simple. Old floor plans hung on one wall. Spare parts lined the shelves. A photo of my grandfather standing in front of this very building looked back at me from a dusty frame. I exhaled. This wasn't the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a better design. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Dinner tonight, 6:30. Bring that bottle I like. Then another. Your niece asked if you're still famous. I smiled. I hadn't seen Isabel in almost a year, but I still saw her children. Every month. Because they weren't part of what went wrong. They were part of what was worth keeping. At dinner, my niece sat across from me with a piece of paper. I made this in school, she said proudly, unfolding it. A drawing of a hotel. Flowers in front. A big balcony. A tiny figure on the roof with a briefcase. That's you, she said. The man who makes things work. I smiled. Not the man who won. Not the man who fought. Not the man who punished. Just the man who made things work. That night, I sat on my porch overlooking the Marseille harbor. Same spot. Same water. But the view felt different. Lighter. I pulled out the old key again. Not because I needed it. Just to hold it. To remember what it meant to carry something quietly. For years. With no guarantee anyone would ever see the weight. But in the end, they did. Not with applause, but with steadiness. With trust. With space. Some victories don't come with fireworks. They come with silence. With being able to walk through a hallway knowing it still stands because you built it right. They come when the door you were pushed out of, you open quietly with your own key.